Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Beyond the Whistle, where we're highlighting women leading the way. Today, we're really excited to be joined by Athletic Director Lynne Robinson. Lynn has substantial experience in many different capacities in athletics. So to kind of get things started, I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit, maybe touch on her experience and kind of how things have changed over time. I know a lot of you are familiar with her, but just kind of to kick things off. So Lynn, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited.
Thank you, Tori. Thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone who's joining us tonight. I just want to commend Tori for this whole initiative that she's done, and I have the previous ones were so impressive, so I have a lot to live up to tonight. So thank you, Tori, for having me. So for those of you who don't know, I've been the athletic director since 2007, since the fall of 2007, so 13 years now. It's hard to believe, but my entire career was spent at the Mount, including being a student athlete and coach, and then an administrator. It's we all say that as you get older, how fast time goes, and it's hard to believe that I've been here this long as an AD and also as an administrator, and then so the Mount clearly is in my blood. It's in my heart and in my soul. So it's been certainly a journey of a wonderful journey. And the one thing, each time when I walk in this building, it just filled with such gratitude and memories, and it's been a wonderful journey. So yeah, I started out things have changed dramatically since I started out in the early 1980s, as you can well imagine. The university has changed in terms of the size of the university and the demographics with men's and women's student athletes. And when I was at the Mount, there was a core group of us who played 3 sports. There was, I tell our student athletes now, I said, I played at a time that there was a beginning and end to seasons. So, and in fact, it was kind of expected that if you wanted to have teams, you needed people to play multi-sports. But my sport was basketball. Generally, that's the one I tried to play as much as I could year round. But I was very fortunate growing up in that with my father being the head men's basketball coach here, that I had the gym to myself and learned from him and played basketball with of course, when I played, it was the regular size basketball, and just had many times I've just had a very supportive family that when there weren't many opportunities for girls growing up for teams nowadays, the girl, and my daughters included, y'all started playing soccer or sports when you were 4 or 5 probably. We did not have that when I was young. It was just learning to play with your parents and your friends. I did have a great experience with a gentleman who was really a pioneer in women's sports, and in fact he was a writer for Sports Illustrated, and he started a girls track club, and when I was in middle school age, probably 6th grade through 9th grade, and we went around the country to track meets, and his name is Bill Gilbert, and he wrote a lot about girls and women in sport, and he ended up coaching at the Mountain, coached, and I played for tennis for him. So it was an integral part of my life and everything that he had done for providing opportunities for girls when we were when there were no other opportunities until high school to play on a team. But at the Mount, we were Division II at the time, so we were in the AIAW. The women's sports were in the AIAW. So when the Mount went co-ed in 1972, the first women's sports were added in 1974, and as there weren't a whole lot of women at the Mount, so that therefore when we started competing and adding sports, there was that, like as I said, that core group of us that went from, we might be a field hockey practice, and then we go to basketball practice, and sometimes the sports that overlap, but we wouldn't change anything for the world. And as it evolved, I coached at my old high school and taught at my old high school for a year or so, and then as the Mount was growing its sports, they had an opportunity to be in for some part-time positions. So I that's how I got started. Literally got started. It was a big change was for intercollegiate athletics for the women's teams was when the NCAA said, well, we want to add women's sports. And so in the early 1980s, the shifted from the AIAW to the NCAA for women's sports, which was it was unfortunate because the AIAW had been such a wonderful home for women's athletics, but the NCAA came in with their resources. And from then on, it was both men and women under the NCAA from about 1981, 82 on. the career path quickly, just to summarize, we also, the Mount was Division II and transitioning to Division I in the late 1980s, and they needed to have an administrator to deal with compliance. And so that's where I cut my teeth in compliance, which to this day, I'm really happy that I did that and learned so much about the rule book, and we had so much to learn. So that was part of how I cut my teeth on becoming a full-time administrator. And from there, just grew in my role through the years and became an associate AD, and then eventually becoming athletic director in the fall of 2007. That's a very quick summary over about a lot of years, but I know we have a lot of topics to cover.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, compliance, I mean, that's a huge, when I was in grad school, they made us read the entire manual, which at the time was the worst assignment I've ever gotten in my life, but now is awesome because I pretty much know where everything is. So I mean,
Yeah.
it was a rough semester, but worked out
Lots of rules. Yeah, lots of rules.
lot there. So kind of diving in, because like you said, we do have a lot that we wanted to talk about. I really wanted to touch on decision making in this episode, because one, decision making in leadership is huge. I mean, that's what leaders do, and being able to make decisions is a huge part of it. But right now, from March till now and into the future, I mean, that's what's going on right now. I mean, that's the biggest topic right now. So kind of to kick things off, what kind of big decisions, we'll start with kind of big decisions, have you had to make in your career that have kind of shaped how you've gone about creating a decision-making process?
So I would say in general, and even if they're little decisions, those are the types of topics that make us all have to really think about and consider. But I think the key is in any decision-making process is first of all, surround yourself with really smart people, really good people, and people who will challenge you, support you, make you think outside the box a little bit in general. So I'd say if you were to say what type of decision maker I am, I think I'm a very collaborative decision maker, very transparent, and very empathetic, and I want to hear all sides, and it's one of those things that I really count on folks if I do not know a lot about a certain topic, right? And I think I know a lot about a lot of things in athletics, but certainly I don't know everything. And I truly count on professionals, folks in the business, and also my own staff, and also just colleagues that I've met through the years. I mean, I won't hesitate, and I know our coaches all do this. They like to bounce things off of their coaching colleagues. I mean, well, I'm the exact same way, and I can't tell you how this last 5-6 months has really sealed that for me, had the importance of that. So when I look at decisions, made large and small, when I think back to decisions that have been made in the past, some I probably, I can't remember exact situation, but I'm sure there's times that I would have maybe done things a little differently. But I do believe in collaboration. You can't be in a silo. You can't be in a silo. You always have to have folks around you that can help you make especially the big decisions and the really tough decisions. So, and I think that my career is when I think back to some of the mentors I've had in my life, I've learned that from them, and I hope that I have shared that with others. So when you look back at I can remember making the decision to move from Division II to Division I. What a big, and this is, that's not an athletics decision, that's a university decision. So, that's the other part of it, that athletics is an integral part of the university. And so you always have to know that is, we are, as I say to our coaches, we're part of the university team. We're all part of the same team. And so any decisions that we make have to go hand in hand with the decisions of what's best for the greater good. And while some things decisions might be tough to make for certain aspect of it, but you hope that you're making it for the greater good, and the greater good of the university and whatever the certain topic might have to be. I don't know if that made any sense.
No, that's perfect. It kind of follows, what other kind of impacts do you think about then when you make decisions? So obviously being part of a university, the impacts that has, but are there any other, considerations you make? Obviously it depends on what the decision is, but
Correct.
types of impacts that you consider.
Yeah, so the obviously the university mission, the university, the priorities that you might have in the that we might have in the department at a given time frame. So what sports are we going to add? Well, let's look at that. What's going to help? Give me the data. Give me some data. What's going to help me to come up, help not just me, us decide to take a certain course of action. So, that's probably an example that we've done in the past. I know that's later. We're probably going to talk about that later. But that whole decision-making process of what sports to add, what sports should we sponsor? So, look at sports sponsorship. Look at what students are playing at youth and high school level. Look at our geographic area. Look at our recruiting footprint. Where do we usually draw from? And look at our facilities. So all of those helped fuel the decision making to add certain sports and the timing of it. And they were all part of that decision making. It wasn't just, let's just tomorrow. Well, let's just add this sport. Like, no, let's look at the rationale. Let's look at the data. Let's look how this fulfills and complements the mission of the department and the university, and then take it from there. There are many different pieces to decision making for sure.
Yeah. And then, kind of on the flip side, I know we kind of talked about it when you and I talked. The university right now is in a very much a growth phase of adding sports, and exactly what you're saying, taking those considerations into account. We had talked about on the flip side years ago, needing to cut sports, and obviously that wasn't using your words, a silo decision. You didn't sit in your office and decide, we're cutting, I need to cut these sports. So how do you go about, a decision like that? That's not necessarily your decision, but decision that you kind of need to implement and accomplish, within yourself.
Yes, that's probably, if you would have some of the hardest, most difficult moments of my professional career, and to this day, it's still the same. And that was cutting sports, and you have to, as a professional, you have to do what as much as you might disagree with the decision, and try to give other information to inform the decision. But it was a decision that had to be made, and I was the one to deliver it to the two golf teams and the men's soccer team back in the fall of 2012, and it was, it was just terribly difficult. And it was terribly difficult because I had, not only to those student athletes and those families involved who were current members of the team, but to all of the men and women who've been part of those programs, and the alumni who've been part of it. So it ended up being a very, very challenging time for not just me personally, but for the department and for all those folks involved, for those coaches. Imagine that. And then just for all the alumni, that it was a very tough situation. So it just, what the thing we tried to do with them right away was like, hey, how can we support all of them as a university, as the alumni, and hope that the time will come that we could reinstate those programs. And in fact, the time did come, and it wasn't too far away from the original time of them. Not too many years passed before we could do that, and so we were very thrilled that we could do that. But that was very, very difficult, and it's just one of those things that at the time it was thought to be the right course of action. I did not agree with it. You see a lot over the last 6 months how many schools have cut sports, and I feel for them, because I know what they're going through, and then even a couple of them quickly reinstated them. But at the end of the day, they cut sports, and it's in some sense, some cases. Now I know some of those schools had 30-some sports, so I get it in some respect. But other than that, if they're not really costing that much money, I don't think it's worth the bad blood with the hurt that it causes, and the anxiety that it causes, and it was just really rough. So couldn't be happier that we reinstated those 3 sports.
No, yeah, I mean, that would be an unbelievably hard spot to be in, having to deliver news like that. I mean, I couldn't imagine. But I think you kind of touched on the support afterwards, and I think that's huge. And I think that's something, you've kind of shown, since March, and, with a lot of decisions, and is an important part of decision making too, that, things don't end with a decision. Cutting a sport, you could do it and walk away and be done with it. But, I think a good leader has that after work, the how can we support afterwards. And I think that's something you do really well. And I think that's a huge part.
Oh, thanks, Tori. I there's no doubt that empathy is just something that we have to have. We have to have, and it's sincere, and it's something that we just it just can't be done and turn the page. Yeah, that we know that. I always think about my, these are like my own kids, right? My kids are grown now, but these are like my own kids and part of the family, and then you hope that you always do right by them, even though I know darn well there's been some tough decisions that happen that I'm sure people disagree with, and that, but no, you can't just turn the page and just move on.
Right. No, I mean, and so kind of moving along to tough decisions, tough days. I kind of want to go back to March to kind of start. And it was funny. We the soccer team, we just started small group practice this week, and I was pulling up our practice plans, and my last practice plan was March 11th. It was still on my desk. I added in now, September 3rd today, and I was kind of laughing. I was like, wow, that's a crazy gap between sessions that I hope never happens ever again. But, talking about difficult conversations and hard decisions, what was that day like? Just kind of generally, I've got, a lot of questions surrounding, but that day that we ultimately ended up, canceling, the students went home, we were canceling sports, I remember we were sitting in a meeting, and, I think Maria was calling out every basketball tournament that was getting canceled, and we just started getting all this information at once. What was that day kind of like for you?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about looking at your old. I was in preparing for this because I knew that was one of the questions. I just went back and looked at my calendar, my Outlook calendar, and I said, just looked at what happened since March. In some ways it feels like it was yesterday. In some ways it feels like it's ages ago and ages ago. So Tuesday, March 10th, I was at our men's lacrosse game at Johns Hopkins. And I'm sitting with the Hopkins AD, second half. We ended up losing a heartbreaker in overtime, but beautiful night, beautiful March night. And we were talking about the whole situation, because by that time the Ivy League had said they're not going to play in the NCAA basketball tournament. A couple schools were starting to close down, and she got the call. She goes, oh, she says, I got to go. She goes, we're going to make an announcement tomorrow. I said, are y'all going remote? And she goes, yes, we are. So here I was at a game in Baltimore, beautiful night, great game. Would have been, almost pulled it out, but still a valiant effort by the guys. And then by Wednesday, March 11th, the Mount had announced that we were going to go remote for a short period of time, right? That's what everyone was doing. And then you could sense the dominoes starting to. So here we were hosting the Northeast Conference on March 12th, exactly what you were saying, hosting the women's basketball semifinal. And we called I don't think it was scheduled, but we called it. I think I called a coaches meeting, right? And then I think darn near everyone was in there. And you're right, Maria was going through then I got a call from the president, and the Northeast Conference had pulled the plug on all the spring sports, canceled the basketball tournament, and all the spring sports and that. So there was just this domino effect. So when I think back to that, it's so vivid in so many ways. And then those next few days are just like a blur, because this was something that I don't care how much experience any of us have. No one had ever, obviously, that we never had this type of thing, never had this pandemic. So that was just an emotional roller coaster. It was just a roller coaster, and that roller coaster has just continued for many months, but nothing like those first couple days. And I went with, we all met, and there was still so much uncertainty. We didn't know, could could they have limited competition? Could they, because, you know, some of they were having some games coming up, and so but we knew quickly then that they couldn't. So I went with, Maria was Coach Marxano and her staff were meeting with the team. They hadn't heard yet, and they were here in the Ark, and I went and talked to them, and, you know, I got choked up. They were crying. The coaches were. It was just unimaginable, as for anyone who's on this call. This whole 6 months has been unimaginable. So it was just couldn't imagine. And I, you know, I think often about, and Tori, you and our coaches do such a great job on the on working with our student athletes on things such as perseverance and resiliency and all those core values that you all bring to your programs. And if there was ever a time that all of us needed it, you know, it was then. And I think that having that and what you all have done and continue to do all these months with your team, most virtually, right, remotely in Zoom and whoever. I never heard of Zoom before March before March 11th or March 12th. So what you guys have done is amazing. But no, that's a time that I'll never ever forget. None of us will, I'm sure. When those dominoes started falling, and then I looked back at my calendar, and we had you know, university calls every single day. We had NEC calls 3 times a week, and it was just, it just kept changing. Things kept on changing, and they continue to change. I mean, it's just, things continue to evolve.
Yeah, no, I think I think about a month after that, I think we were all over Zoom for a little while.
Yeah, zoomed out. Zoomed out, yeah.
But no, I think you're totally right. I mean, I think what's really interesting about that date in particular is how quickly things evolve, you know. So you know, we kind of knew things were happening, you know, like you said, you know, the Ivy Leagues had already decided not to play, and, you know, some other conferences were doing things, but, you know, to a certain extent, it felt like all at once that we went from normal to none of this is happening, we're going home, you know, all of that. You know, how did that kind of compare to any other decision you've made? Because I mean, I have significantly less experience making big decisions, but I just don't feel like there's that many moments where you go from normal to complete opposite in, you know, the span of 24 hours, or in that meeting, like planning to host the NEC women's basketball game, to then everyone going home. You know, how does that compare?
So we had our swimmers were supposed to go to an event. Our bowling team was on the way. They were driving. They had to turn around, and then let alone the basketball, women's basketball championships that we were hosting that night, and all the spring sports. Nothing can compare to that. Nothing is comparable to that, and I hope that I never have anything else that's comparable to that in terms of the just the roller coaster. As I said earlier, just the roller coaster and the kind of the chaos that was ensuing. And so you have obviously the real, you know, the health concern, right? We didn't know enough about the virus, and so you have that. You're worried about, I mean, sports, but you're worried about the bigger issues. You know, at that point, of course, you worry about the university and with sending students home. You worry about not keep on learning about how the virus, everything we could. We're all watching to try to learn as much as we can. Actually, again, going back to what I said, learning about the science of it, and it was so many unknowns, and it was scary. It was scary. It was anxiety. It was scary. It was very, very sad, and it was everything combined, and not knowing what each day would bring after that. And you hope that it was more. And I keep saying, you know, you keep on looking for answers to your questions, and you get a couple answers, then you get a dozen more questions, and I feel we're still in that, although we've come a long way and have learned so much since then. But no, that time, it was a time like no other, and I'm sure that everyone on the call would agree to that. And we hope that we are ready for 2020 to just move on out and just be a distant memory at some point in time. But yeah, no, just trying to absorb and learn and listen, and everyone was part of that. Everyone in the department of the school was all part of that too. Trying to navigate this new world as best we can.
Right. No, I mean, that was a pretty wild time. Not gonna lie, it was
Yeah, so much
interesting.
uncertainty.
What at that point? So in March, what kind of impacts did you think were gonna evolve from that? Because I don't know, personally, I don't know that in March I sat there thinking, we wouldn't have a fall season. I mean, I don't really, I think I was I thought I was a pessimist, and I didn't think we were coming back to school that year, and I think I was on the like very pessimistic side of most of the department thinking that, but I in no way thought we were going to be, September 3rd, not, competing. So what was kind of going through your mind as far as impacts go?
I agree with you. I did not think that it would affect the fall. I didn't think it would affect the fall, and we had pressed the pause button for the school. The university, remember, we were thinking about coming back. I think it was in March, late in March. Yeah, I think that we had hoped to be able to come back, and that I think we quickly saw that probably wasn't going to happen as the numbers of the infection, the positive rate, the infections started continuing going up. But I never thought that it would go into the fall. Now, I did have a couple of friends and a couple of colleagues who were more in the medical field, and they said it's going to last, because at that point they were comparing it to and it's hard to imagine that in 2020 you had to compare it to something to the 19 pandemic, but that it's just that as much
history
as
major,
the Spanish, yeah, it was Spanish flu, and that you think we've come a long way. I know we have as far as medicine, but there is something about the trajectory of these types of viruses that someone said, no, it's not going to, and quickly as we all tried to learn more about the science of it, there was no vaccine. There was no, and everyone, the NIH, LCT, all the companies started pouncing on it to find the vaccine. So it just, I think but in March, I never thought it would affect the fall. You're 100% right. I didn't think that, and I obviously was naive. And now we're, looking, it's getting better, I think now. And that was the other thing. Was remember at the time they were saying there will be maybe it could get better in the summer, or it could get worse because people will be out and about more and that. So I think it was just the level of uncertainty and the just people not so uncertain of the future, and kind of afraid too, when you looked at all the numbers and the number of people it was affecting. But so what happened in March was, working with very quickly with all of you guys was main. So, okay, what about recruiting? So when you look at your recruiting, and again, it's not about sports per se, but about the university. So we still have to recruit. We know we're going to, at that point, we're planning to open in the fall. And thank God we have opened in the fall, and we didn't know what it would look like to open up in the fall, but we started planning accordingly as a university, planning accordingly. And that's when all of our coaches continued with their recruitment efforts, unbelievable recruitment efforts, the largest freshman class ever, many of whom over 200 are student athletes. So it's just such a credit to all of you. But yeah, we just, we planned as if we were going to come back in the fall. I think that's always what we thought that we could do. We knew there had to be a lot of work going into it, whether or not we'd be able to play sports, or what the landscape might look like when we started in the fall. But we planned that way, and I think it was really great to be able to do that, to look at that with that mindset. And it did create a whole lot of work, a whole lot of effort by the university, a collaborative effort to look at all the different aspects of it. But yeah, it was a total team effort.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so going into the summer now, look completely different. Like March was information, we don't know, we got to make decisions. Summer, I feel like, was just information change, it just this ever evolving situation, the past few months. So, what did your summer kind of look like, leading up to, all of this planning to reopen, and where was the information coming from? What information were you and everyone kind of using to inform these decisions to get us reopened?
Right. So we were all, President Trainer, he organized, and it was called a Mount Safe Initiative. And there were many different parts of campus were part of that to look at all aspects of the campus. And of course, we had one for athletics, and it had a great group of our colleagues who were part of that team of initiative looking at that and looking at every aspect that we could think of. And I'm telling you, that plan continues to evolve. It really does, because and it was meant to be a living plan, because nothing is stagnant, nothing is certain. So we've pivoted. We've had to pivot many times, as the total university plan. But the information we were getting was, so you look at federal, the state, the Maryland had a big reopening plan, which I think the governor, I want to say it was sometime in April, that it was a very detailed plan. So we knew we had to follow that guidance. The local, the NCAA put together, which is, I just got another version of it today. I think it was like every week we were getting more stuff. It was called the Resocialization of Sport Plan from the NCAA and from their sports sciences area. That was very, very detailed and very specific, and that continued to change through the summer. So we had that. From the NEC perspective, we had a COVID advisory committee, and that was made up of two, at least one person from every conference school, included doctors, trainers, administrators, and they've continued to meet weekly, and that was helpful because it was a lot of sharing among. So what we're doing at the Mount in Maryland, might be different than what they were doing in New York City, which of course we know why, but yet it was really important to share all of these different perspectives and these different findings to help enlighten us as we continue to look at our plan. So the summer was massive, just research. I'm on other different committees that I'm on, and we continued to with other women's athletics directors, and there was a lot of sharing going on. Like, how are you handling that? Could you share your plan with us? Could you show us what you've come up with? Obviously, a linchpin to all of ours was the folks that were part of the plan, but it was the sports medicine team, because they were on the front lines of this too, because we knew a lot of the mitigation, the mitigation efforts that we made were going to have to go hand in hand with the sports medicine, because that was they were on the forefront. And again, the university, sharing it with our university colleagues, was we had weekly calls, 2-hour calls, looking at every single aspect. So what's the dining hall? What about the classrooms? What about remote learning? What about the residence halls? Everything, including athletics. So all those pieces were part of. And again, always looking at the data. Where were we? And we were fortunate, being in Frederick County, that the positivity rate of the virus was always pretty low here. And so we knew that going into it, and we felt that was a real benefit for us to have that, knowing that was the case, and that's continued to be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I like our plan. Obviously I've been pretty involved in it, and I think from our team perspective, we're kind of moving through it, and it seems to be going pretty well. What was, I don't want to say an end goal to the plan, because that's not really what I mean, but what was kind of your, I guess I would say main goal, main consideration? What did you want to make sure we were able to get out of this year? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can speak. So because we thought we would have fall sports, kind of hoped that we would. The plan, the resocialization sport plan, as you know, is very much a transition phasing period. So we found out when the numbers started to spike in July, we knew we couldn't bring teams back early. We just knew we weren't ready for that. And then we didn't have to make that decision because it was made for us. So push the start of fall sports later, and let's see what happens then. As those decisions continue to be made through August, we know, of course, now the fall sports have been postponed. So when you look at my long-term goal was just to have it was never about wins and losses. It was not about winning games. It was not about winning championships. I'm not choking when I say that. It just wasn't. It was about being able to reopen campus, knowing that our student athletes are such a large part of this population, allowing them to play the sports they love. I think, when we know what was, especially those spring sport athletes, and of course our winter sports who were playing in the championships, a couple of them, we know that certainly it gives us a new appreciation to realize what we've lost. A love of sports, and something that sports have been such an integral part of our lives, all as coaches and of our student athletes. But it was really hoping to, knowing that you said your last practice band was March 11th, we may have kids coming back who I'm sure they were able to work out some, but not really maybe sports specific. So we knew that if we could get them to return, get the campus open, come and get them a gradual transition to just be able to play again. And knowing that we didn't know what games we'd have or when we'd have them, but just a very gradual transition to it, knowing that and praying that even if as we got closer to the fall, even if it wasn't this fall, okay, well, get back into the swing of things, and then the spring. Let's shoot for the spring, and that's kind of what we're still. That absolutely is what we're still hoping for. So, the goal was to hope that we could reopen the school, knowing at least do a plan that was a safe return to sport, a gradual return to sport, getting they hadn't been doing strength and conditioning and the running and the skill related stuff, and also keeping them safe from the virus as much as possible, and encouraging them to, doing. That's why, like, you're entering your small group phase. So started with 0, then it was individual, now small group, and then eventually leading up to full team. Normally you would say, okay, full team, and now we're going to play a game, but we know that's not the case, and that's okay. That's okay. They're out there playing, and hopefully they'll be able to know that, hey, I can go out there and play the sport that I love again, and know that around the corner, we're getting closer to have competition.
Yeah, I think that was huge. And I love that, I think we were all on the same page of just wanting to be back and letting the student athletes be back and be, even if it's socially distanced with masks around people. I've just noticed, since we've gotten into the small group phase, just, this kind of sigh of relief, even for us as a staff, to just be on a field and be around our team and friends again. There's just, I think that was, again, don't get me wrong, I miss games. I would love it if I was actually getting ready and scouting for a game on a Friday night tomorrow, but there's so much more behind sport than just the game. And I think we were all on the same page that we wanted to make the most for the student athletes and give them this chance to be back and at least be around and play and be around their sport that they love.
So true. And just giving them just a little sense of a little normalcy. Now, having their coach on the sidelines with a mask certainly isn't normal, and them wearing masks and stuff, but just a gradual return to some normalcy, and knowing that, okay, baby steps to continue with that. So no, I hope that that's the case, that they're enjoying being out there again. I'm happy they can be out there.
Me too. It's been nice. Continuing with the fall, you kind of touched on the phases and things, but what does the fall look like now? Not just for soccer for us, but what's kind of, how have some of the decisions that were made on this phasing and all of that, how do you feel like it's been working and moving through the fall?
We would like to have, I know that we'd like to have decisions now. We don't want to wait till October 1st, because we have some teams, our fall sports know that they can still continue practicing, and we're not sure the timeline, but we know that we hope anyway that there'll be a season in the spring then. So then we have winter sports we usually play in October and November. So whether it's bowling and swimming and then indoor track and basketball and that. So to me, there's still some uncertainty. Not just to me, there is some uncertainty still. What will that look like? So the NCAA is working on, so there's still some big decisions to be made. So the Northeast Conference, we'll talk about the Northeast Conference first. So they're still committed to that, no sports through October 1st, but they will have a meeting again of the Northeast Conference presidents, and we continue to meet once or twice a week with the ADs and the SWAs to look at what about the remaining fall activities that we could be having, which is, golf, tennis, swimming, bowling, cross country. Well, not cross country, but indoor track, and obviously basketball. What's going to happen with that? So the basketball, So what I hope happens is that we just can come at some. So this is early September now. By the end of September, we will know more about those decisions and about what's going to happen and the timing of it. And what do I think will happen? Right now, it looks like things will be pushed back. It's not been finalized, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were not able to, as much as we would like to, be able to have competitions of those other sports in the fall, in October and November. We will see. The NCAA Council is meeting in, I think, mid September. I want to say around the 16th, and they have many different models to look at for basketball and what that might look at. So, of course, from the NCAA perspective, they cannot have another year without March Madness. Maybe it'll be May Madness. I'm not sure, but that is a big part of what they're doing and their different committees looking at it. So I wouldn't be. I'm not convinced to say that we will not have any sports playing. We know fall sports will, but any of the winter sports playing in the fall months, whether it's November, I'm just not sure yet. They might be very cautious. The Mounts schedule is that we go up until prior to Thanksgiving, and then it's remote. So that time over the break will give all schools a chance to really see where we are, and it could be certainly come January and mid-January when the second semester starts, it could be a crazy time with all sports playing possibly. So no one wants to jeopardize. Here's the thing: when you look at the greater good in the big picture, if by holding off playing other teams right now, either traveling or teams traveling here, if just holding on that for another couple months, if that helps us in the long run, it's probably the best thing to do. It is the best thing to do. And I know everyone wants to get out there and play. I know that they're just for the same reasons you articulated, why your kids are enjoying even those few, that it's not a massive amount of time, but the little time they're getting out there and how much they love it. And it's renewed their love of their sport. And I know everyone feels the same way, but if that can help us have a prolonged success in fighting this battle, it's the better course of action. And I may be overly cautious, but look, we just need to do the right thing. And if that is the right thing, we'll wait. We'll wait and we'll make sure we get it right.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like it's the same. It's the same decision as March. As much as we work in athletics and we love athletics and everyone loves athletics, there's a lot more to the world and a lot more important things. And like you said, if not playing games for a few more months, helps. Stop the. I mean, it makes sense. Unfortunately,
if it helps, if it helps,
it's a worthwhile cause to not play some games and get this handled.
Exactly right. And if it's better for the university, and that's the most important of all. Yeah.
Speaking of working as a team, exactly. It's not just one sport, one athletic sport. I mean, we're kind of all, to sound very cheesy as we get to the end, like we're all kind of in this together. So
we've been saying that too, haven't we? Yes.
To kind of slowly start wrapping things up, not necessarily on a COVID perspective, but what big decisions do you feel like are kind of coming in athletics? I kind of throwing this one out of the blue, but I think there's, even outside of COVID, a lot of things in college athletics going on. What do you feel like is on the horizon, as once we get over this hurdle?
Just in the global world of college athletics, I think that every day you're reading about some of these departments that were so, I'm glad we don't have football. I can say that my heart aches for those. I think that's probably why we always thought we'd have fall sports, because there's no way we can't have college football, right? And so some schools are still planning on having college football, so they'll be there. There you go. We will have the experiment. There will be the experiment of the college football and of course the professional football season, how they all do it. But we're not we're not professional sports, so there's a lot of big things on the rise, and I think that it's in terms of our conference affiliation, I don't see a whole merry-go-round of conference stuff happening again in the very near future. I do think that this has caused everyone to probably relook at things, whether it's recentering. I'm talking globally now, and so we're a school of 1,900, and there's schools of 50,000, right? Sorry, somehow I muted myself. Look at everything about the university and its operations. I think we have to look at what have we all learned about. So certainly, as we talked about Zoom earlier, all these schools and the technology, how we've all every school's raised their game in technology, and that's been really good. I mean, we know that we have students here who've had to study remote because they've been in quarantine or whatever the case may be, and how fortunate are we that they could stay on top of classes, and that bodes well when we do start athletics, right? Teams traveling. So I think in globally looking at the whole athletics, I think people who are involved in the arms race, when I talk about that, that's, well, I got to get a new shinier locker room than so-and-so. I think this has caused probably a lot of those schools to say, okay, wait a second, we got to get our priorities straight. I think for us at the Mount, as we've continued on, I haven't even mentioned our two newest sports, the men's and women's water polo. I met with Alyssa, our coach, today, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of those student athletes that they've talked about taking a leap of faith, have come to the school, and in this current environment, so they're going to get started. But for us, I think we're always looking for ways that we can do things better, smarter, and I know that everyone is looking at that too, in terms of across the country, and how athletics evolve. If there is the NCAA is interesting too. There's always seems to be some lawsuits of some sort, but they are very dependent upon the men's basketball tournament as we know in terms of that, the CBS contract. So we'll see what evolves as far as the NCAA is concerned. So I think it'll cause everyone to really take a hard look at their operations and how you do things, and make sure that that you're doing things that are the best things for your university, and that's that seems to be a theme of what we've been saying today, and I know certainly that we're along those lines too. But I don't see the conference. I think a question just came up: what do we think of Robert Morris leaving? So when you look at our conference alignment, Robert Morris, they've been talking about leaving for a while, and so that was something that came up in the middle of all this, right in the middle of the summer. It's surprised, but yet didn't surprise some people. They knew that they were looking to maybe make their footprint less in the East Coast, more Pittsburgh and West. And as far as them leaving, they built a beautiful new basketball facility, and we knew that at some point they wanted to jump out of the conference. So go ahead, we're strong. We're strong. And Noreen Morris, our commissioner, wonderful commissioner, she always says we don't need to search. We added Mary Mac a couple years ago. We have a solid core group of schools right now, and we have our automatic bids and all of our sports. And in fact, as schools in the league have been adding sports, the NEC has added more championships. So that's been really helpful to have for our teams, because it's hard to to start sports, and if they don't really have a home to compete in a championship, it's just hard to do that. So we've been very fortunate that we're having that. And then Howard University, which for us, out of Washington, D.C., they've become associate members in 6 different sports. So I think that'll really be a positive dimension for the Northeast Conference. But I think you'll see it'll be interesting to see how this fall goes for the sports, for the conferences and the schools that have decided to have football and some other fall sports. It will be interesting to see where it's going. I think there will always be a place for intercollegiate athletics at universities and colleges and universities at all divisions, and they are very visible part of universities. They're integral parts of universities, and I think that's something that will not change. But I'm sure there's going to be different aspects of it that evolve.
I agree. I think like we said earlier, there's so much more to athletics. I think it's important. I don't think it's going to go away because it brings so much more than just games, right? That's
Right.
kind of what we've been saying.
It does. It's just alumni engagement, it's school pride, it's all those things, and just having the hopefully building memories for our student athletes, and that they'll look back at their careers and be, hey, I got a great education. The Mount really cared about me, and I loved my experience playing sports.
Yeah, I definitely. I think that's a great kind of place to end. The last question I'll kind of throw out there is, that we've kind of asked to everyone that's been on it. Obviously, I very much appreciate you coming on. This was awesome, and I was really excited that you were willing to do this. But in a greater sense, other than you're great, and of course you would say yes when I asked if you wanted to come on. Why did you want to kind of join and be on this tonight?
Well, I think this from the time that you talked about your idea for this initiative, and I thought it was great, and you're a one of our wonderful coaches, and I get I learn a lot from all of our coaches, and I feel that having so many and through all this COVID, I'll get to the answer, right? And to talk to all of you, you've really inspired me, all the things that you've done with your student athletes throughout these past crazy six months. But, I think it's things like that, it is things like this that I can, if I can get out, and if it helps putting a face with a name or however it may be. But these are all important questions that we talk about them a lot, but, people don't know. People aren't familiar with the process that we go through, so it is a great platform to do it. As far as that goes, and I think that when I look at and it's about women, it's about women in athletics and women's coaches, and I can tell you that there was a time that there were not many women in athletics, and there was a time that I can tell you some stories about being the only woman in a meeting of all men. So I look at all of our coaches with great pride, but our women coaches especially, because they have there wasn't always wasn't always a lot of opportunities for women, and so I think that having you take this initiative, and as I said, the first two have been so wonderful, and I maybe almost hesitate to do it, Tori, because big shoes to fill here, the tough acts to follow, I should say. But I think however we can be part of empowering women, mentoring women, letting them know you can have a career in intercollegiate athletics beyond being a student athlete. I think that's something that we should continue to do as much as we can, and know that and be mentors for them as much as we can, because that's something that it's as much as we've come a long way, the numbers are still relatively small, and so that I wouldn't hesitate to. I will say yes anytime you ask me to do something like this, and I know that anyone that you ask would do that as well. So it's really is my pleasure and to be a part of it, and I do thank you for all your thoughtful questions that you put together, and for taking the lead on this, because it shows a lot. I mean, it shows a lot, and it's really great for the university and for athletics, and for especially our women.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I really appreciate you being on. I think this was really awesome. I think there are so many great, things that you spoke on, and, information, and, just some really good, life skills and things to know that were really great. So thank you again. Thank you to everyone that joined us. Again, we'll hopefully be back in another month for another episode. Let us know if you have any questions or people you'd like to come on. I'm always open to suggestions. But again, Lynn, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the night.
Thanks, Tori. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.